Councillor Perry, you're going to read. Welcome. I'm calling to order the Committee of the Whole meeting, our first in the town of Collingwood, for Monday, May 1, 2023. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement, and Councillor Perry is going to do the honors.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. For more than 15,000 years, the First Nations walked upon and cared for the lands we now call home. Anishinaabek, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and many others who were families, friends, and communities the way we are today. The town of Collingwood acknowledges the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818 and the relationship it establishes with the original inhabitants of Turtle Island. We acknowledge the reality of our shared history and the current contributions of Indigenous people within our community. We seek to continue empowering expressions of pride amongst all of the diverse stakeholders in this area. We seek to do better and to continue to recognize, learn, and grow in friendship and community, nation to nation.
There we are. I'm now looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. The motion reads as follows: that the content of the Committee of Whole agenda for May 1, 2023 be adopted as presented. Councillor Potts, Councillor Houston, any comments or amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position, please let me know. There are no deputations for this evening's meeting. We do have 3 staff reports. The first one is on youth engagement opportunities. And I'm going to turn this over to our clerk.
Thank you, Worship. I don't know whether I should go to the podium or not. All right, I will. I'll come back here to address questions so I have the full report.
Okay.
All right, so we have a very brief PowerPoint presentation regarding our youth engagement and governance next steps. So while Becky's putting it up, our first slide talks about the background. So this is new information for a number of our new councillors here, but youth engagement has been identified as a priority in the Collingwood Community-Based Strategic Plan. The many benefits of engaging youth in municipal government include giving the opportunity for youth to be actively involved in the community that they live. It provides education on how a municipality operates and how decisions that affect them are made in the community. It supports decisions that are progressive, accountable, and sustainable, and ensures that there's a long-term community sustainability and builds civic capacity for the next generations of leaders. So the timeline on how we got here today. In late 2021, Council approved the establishment of an internal working group. So early in 22, what happened was that we solicited interest from members of Council. We had 3 interested members of Council at that time, together with 13 different staff members from various departments across the corporation. During those first 4 months, the group got together probably between 6 to 10 times. I can't remember the exact number. And from that evolved the idea of, originally we were looking at very specific forums that we could address, have annual events that take place. And then it was a decision of the working group to, how about we ask the youth in our community what exactly they want and how they want to be best engaged. So basically we worked with very active members of our committee, including very active members of the library that sat on the committee, and Jennifer Parker, our coordinator of wellness and inclusion. And we launched a survey. The survey was also posted on Engage Collingwood, but provided to a number of youth groups across the community and to the various schools brought to them by Jennifer Parker and the work that she was doing. So the survey highlights on our next slide speak to the survey. We were a little disappointed in the overall numbers, but we did have 74 surveys that were completed. The participants ranged from the ages of 12 to 29 years old. A majority of the respondents were in high school with 60%, 24 did not attend school, and 10 were in elementary school. Approximately 50% of the participants work part-time, with the remaining working either full-time, summer only, or not at all. And almost 75% were not engaged in a youth club or organization. 13% were involved in the Collingwood Youth Centre, and 15% were part of the Collingwood Library Youth Advisory Committee. One of the items I should just quickly elaborate on that. It was a large discussion that happened at the internal working group on really what is considered a youth. And there's a number of different community groups, including the local Rotaract Club. And so we didn't want to limit youth by high school age. So that's why it ranged actually from, I think we had a 10-year-old as well, from 10 to 29 years of age that had responded in part of that survey. So some of the survey highlights, the top 5 issues included mental health and addiction, the lack of affordability, places to hang out, either indoor or outdoor, things to do, and climate change. The top 3 barriers to participating in activities included they didn't know what was happening, they were too busy, or that they didn't interest the individual, or they didn't have a ride. The next slide is basically a duplicate of what the items are that was of interest to the youth that responded to the survey. But I should note that the lowest 2 actually that were identified with the ranking of 5 and 6 on this list were inequality and gender and safety. They felt that they were in an inclusive area and they felt safe in Collingwood. So I thought that was something that I should share. So our next slide is what can we do? The top 5 actions the town could take to help youth have a stronger voice in the community were youth-focused webpage with information, updates, and ways to connect them with the town, a youth council, advising council on youth issues, collaborative projects, youth activists, and a direct line to council. So these were the specific items that they ranked in the survey. There was, I believe, a total of 10 of these items listed, and these were the top items that they wanted to be engaged. One of the factors that we really had to consider when we're looking at this, including the top issues that affect youth in the community, is that the community-based strategic plan was focused on youth's engagement in municipal governance. So we had to keep that lens into our next steps. So our next slide addresses some of the next steps that we took a look at. So the first one is Youth Council. So at this point, there is 2 very active youth groups in the town of Collingwood, one being at the youth center. They have rejuvenated the program that they had in the past, and they have a very active group that meets every other week. We also have a very active youth group that's at the Collingwood Public Library that looks at a number of initiatives, and I think one of them was actually announced tonight, one of the programs that they're looking at. So before we develop a youth council program, the recommendation that staff have is that the mayor and or staff reach out to these local groups and explore opportunities to work with these groups rather than creating our own youth council. The benefit to this is in speaking with other municipalities that have engaged in youth councils, they've seen a success for the first even 6 months, not even a year, and then it peters out and the interest is lost. So unless we can keep the youth really engaged and they're doing other items that are really making them, the work that they're doing, enjoyable, that may not necessarily be reflective of municipal governance, we want to make sure that there's opportunities to collaborate and we're able to move forward that way. So the recommendation there is to explore other opportunities before we look at whether we should be seeking one ourselves. The next item was identify collaborative projects to engage youth or youth activists. So this recommendation would involve youth on a specific town-based project or team. There are many municipal projects that impact youth, and some projects may be more appropriately suited to meaningfully engage youth. This option may be more achievable based on the resources required and provide a focused initiative for youth to be impactful and be able to see the results of their input in the completion of the project. This could range from seasonal recruitment input, participation in job fairs, park development, library program, community participation, etc. In their activist capacity, when there are specific hot topics, when they arise locally, the town could seek interest from the youth to be champions in the development and creation of projects, events, awareness campaigns, etc., where there is specific interest and a strong desire to seek change in the community. This would require staff and or council resources to help facilitate or provide guidance as needed. An example could be the climate change projects and the use of interest in climate change. So the recommendation that we have put forward for council is that staff reports be updated to note if the item is a hot topic for local youth, and if so, suggest how they can be engaged, such as encouraging the public and local youth groups to reach out to the town if they have an idea or interest in the topic, asking youth volunteers or where desired, paid volunteers via per diem for their assistance and participation. So this one, if the recommendation is approved, we anticipate would have a financial impact that could range anywhere between $500 to $1,500, so a nominal amount to cover any potential per diems, awareness campaigns, and logistics that might be required. The next item that staff are recommending is a direct line to council. This could be achieved by council participation at school events or classroom discussions, youth-focused town hall meetings, or council recognition for youth achievements. In the past, council recognized local youth, individuals, or teams at council meetings, similar to what we've seen tonight with Collingwood Blues, providing them with a small token of congratulations on their achievements, a group photo, and recognition of social media work would support this recommendation. So staff have put forward the following formal recommendation that staff and council contact local schools and, if available, homeschooling communication groups and offer availability to attend classrooms, events, etc., to speak with students about municipal government and receive input from youth. Suggest that council and staff representative, council and or staff representative attend each high school twice per year for lunch and learn type discussions that note upcoming council decisions and ask youth to provide their input. That staff prepare, so the recommendation, ultimately outcome of this one would be that staff prepare the framework for recognition of local youth initiatives at council meetings. And there already has been some initial conversation and discussions with the mayor's office, together with our assistant Jenny Haynes, has drafted some concept ideas of how that could move forward. And we're already recognized some of the work that our council has done this year already on attending a school at their own volition to educate students on municipal governance. And the next one is a youth mayor program. So reinstating and enhancing the Youth Mayor Program. This was a program where youth could apply through their school or directly to the town if homeschooled, or if they're not in school, but under the age of 25 or less, to be a youth mayor. The student would participate at a council meeting, do tour of facilities, have their photo taken with a chain of office, participate in local events. So the recommendation is that staff and or members of council to contact the local schools, and if available, others via homeschooling communications group to seek their interest in supporting such an initiative based on the sport, to establish a program for youth mayors to commence in 2024. This initiative would not be limited to students enrolled in schools and could include homeschooled youth or young adults. Obviously, this is based on capacity of existing staff, and staff are recommending that it would occur twice a year. So it could be in the fall semester and the winter semester. Generally being approximately a month long, depending on obviously what activities are happening with council at that time. And I can say that we have had a couple successful participants of the mayor's the student mayor program, which we're calling youth mayor program, with Krista Carter was one of our initial recipients of that honor, and still has her picture with her chain of office, I think. And we were actually recently reached out by another parent in the community that their child has grown up, but still recollects and remembers their time whenever they attended council for that. So I think that's two great initiatives working with the schools for both those types of programs. The other one that actually received a very high result, and we put in our report that we'd like to hold off until next year, is the initiative of having a web page or a website. So there is a communication campaign that's going out later this year on community engagement opportunities. They're looking at doing the update to the town website next year in 2024. So we think gathering youth input into that conversation is important first before deciding to go forward, because it will take time and resources and money to put that together. So that is recommended to stay on hold and get that input during the consultations that are going to happen this year. And that is it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'll read in, I'll ask you when you get back to your seat, take your time. If there's anyone online who wishes to speak to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a few members of the community attending this meeting online. If they wish to address council regarding, or committee of the whole regarding the staff report, please press the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen. And no interest at this time, Your Worship.
Okay, so I'll read in the recommendation here. That staff report C 2023-14, CBSP goal, youth engagement and governance, next steps be received, and that council authorize proceeding with the following youth engagement options. 1. Seek collaborative approaches with other groups to extend existing youth councils. 2. Identify collaborative projects to engage youth or youth activists. 3. Have a direct line to council/council recognition initiative. And 4. Youth Mayor Initiative. And further, that members of council interested in assisting in any of the above initiatives to contact clerk services. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Potts and Deputy Mayor Fryer. And would anyone have any questions or comments? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. Through you to the clerk, I think this is a wonderful feel-good initiative that everybody would love to be on side with. And in that regard, I can think of two specific organizations, one which I'm currently a member of and another that I was a member of that I would think, I can't speak for them, but love to participate somehow in this. Particularly, I think in the honorarium that I would think many organizations in Collingwood would rather than the town necessarily paying it, might want to participate, showing their support of youth by doing that, which is to a certain extent a win-win. But I'm just hoping that we keep the opportunity open for perhaps others to become involved in that sense, not to run the curriculum or whatever, but and another might offer support in training, particularly in public speaking, but I'll save that for another day, I think. I just think it is such a wonderful initiative that I think others would want to come to the table and help out. Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that, because there's lots of smart people in our community who with lots of great thoughts. And okay, that's great. Councillor Potts.
Thanks, Mayor Hamlin. I support this. Obviously, I can relate with some projects in my home that my kids have been doing in regards to future projects in the community. It would be nice to kind of have that extra, I guess, level of or ways that they can, give their feedback. And I just think we attended the school there a few months back, and it was just incredible to see the engagement of the youth and the questions that were asked. It's important, and obviously we want the youth to be more involved, and I would even like to see come, election time, to have the local schools engaged in whether it's a mock election or maybe candidates meetings at the schools to maybe, show interest for their future as well. So something that I would 100% support. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. So I too agree that this is pretty critical. We need to start developing the farm team going forward, just for some younger people to replace us. And I think one great example is Sunset Point and how successful our staff was engaging the youth, and an amazing result we got there. And I think that's one example we've already done. I did have and I'm glad to hear the clerk say that the webpage discussion was going to be delayed, because I was surprised that it was there, given that the webpage medium was like only 8% of how youth engage socially online electronically. So I was surprised to see a webpage suggestion. So I'm glad that that's going to be discussed. I really hope that through this, we will be promoting gender equality and the equity inclusivity initiatives that we have on the go within our municipality, promote that with the youth and in the development of this program. And my last comment was I did kind of harbor a little bit of concern with paying. I do like the word honorarium much better that Councillor Baines used, in terms of maybe a recognition at the end of tenure with certain deliverables. I think there has to be accountability there to receive that honorarium. So those are my comments. I thought it was some really great piece of work, and I hope we can get it up and going as soon as possible.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin, and I too echo the support of the initiative. I was thinking about the fact that as I read through the report and listened to Clerk Amis's overview of it, just a few days into our term, we had the opportunity to sit with the Order of Collingwood committee, and youth recognition was something that they had brought to the forefront as that, and I think everything I'm seeing is certainly in the vein of what they had discussed with us that day. So I was really pleased to see that with regards to it, and I look forward to working this through and seeing it come to fruition. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just say I'm so excited to see this come forward. Youth involved in municipal governance, I think, is going to assist in getting youth voting. And I've seen some research that suggests, well, first of all, youth aren't voting once they turn 18. And also, if you don't vote in your first election, chances of you voting later are really tiny. So this is a good chance for us to get democracy going in our community. I know that a lot of our students in the high school level are from joining communities, but I think that's quite all right, because we know that a lot of our residents, or a lot of the people who come into town to use our recreational facilities, schools, shopping, doctors, hospital, they're going to be from adjoining communities. So I'm not fussed if we happen to have mayor of the month who's actually lives in Wasaga but goes to CCI. So I think, that's really a comment. I had a question. How will you know, Clerk Amis, if a topic is a hot one for youth when it is put on an agenda? Or have we sorted that yet? Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's going to be a work in progress. One of the benefits whenever this was being discussed at department heads is you have a lot of department heads that have a lot of youth.
That's right.
So there was a lot of positive feedback, and this was a good evolution of a report to see that actually be in place. So I think too, moving forward, and that's something that we want council to also recognize. If staff haven't identified it as a hot topic, if you believe that it's a hot topic, make sure that that's part of the consideration when we're looking at moving that initiative forward in consultation regarding it.
Mm-hmm. I'm also sort of wondering, with that in mind, if it makes sense for certain things that if you're not sure to just, there's a very engaged young woman who's running a youth center right now, right? Maybe we could, okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much on that. So we'll bring this recommendation to a vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
I'm not sure if we had the mover and seconder in that one. Or was it okay?
Yes, we
Okay.
did. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. The second staff report is on social media, and we are going to see.
I need to say something.
And we'll hear from our communications manager on this. Thank you.
I think after Dave Steele was up here, it's needed to be adjusted for someone short like me. Thank you, Mayor and Committee of the Whole. Can you hear me okay? I just want to start off by saying thanks, Sarah, for spotlighting that I was student mayor when I was in grade 7. While that didn't lead me down a path of wanting to become an elected official, that may have sparked my interest in public administration, which is what I went to school for, and I've been here for 15 years. So there you go. But in terms of social media policy, I don't have a PowerPoint, by the way. I don't have any visuals to show you. I feel it was quite a straightforward report, but I'll just highlight a couple of the main changes. Firstly, just restating the policy purpose that the town of Collingwood is committed to communicating and engaging with residents, visitors, and stakeholders in an inclusive and respectful manner in a variety of ways which work best for all users, including social media. By using one voice across all corporate social media pages, the town strives to provide timely and reliable information in a professional manner. So firstly, the existing social media policy is from 2016. In social media years, that's about 1,000. A lot has changed in the last 8 years. So administratively, it was due for an update. And administratively for the town of Collingwood, we are separating policy from procedure. So that's why the policy is before you tonight. Elements of the procedure have been, they're sitting in a draft waiting to see if there's any changes from the policy that council would like to see, and that administration is done by staff. Next, that the social media sites, including direct messaging owned by the town of Collingwood, are an extension of the workplace for town of Collingwood employees and representatives. The town is committed to providing a safe, secure, and respectful environment for our staff, residents, and visitors by providing a violence-free workplace, providing a friendly and safe place, ensuring the use of respectful language, and behaving in a safe manner. So, I do want to state that we do encourage residents to follow our social media channels and engage with the town and each other. We encourage dialogue. Even differing opinions is okay. We do encourage that interaction. However, there is a way to do it respectfully. So we have no intention of turning off comments on our channels, as some other municipalities have chosen to do. We do want to allow the public to speak to each other and to us, but there's a way to do it respectfully. Also, just a reminder to the public too that, and to council, we're not able to monitor our social media channels 24/7. There are only 2 of us that are able to do that. So we remind the public that if they're looking for quick answers for something from the town, we do encourage residents to call customer service at 705-445-1030. We post that on our channels many times. And also that we have lots of mechanisms for the public to communicate and provide feedback to the town. Customer service, if it's regarding services and programs, and obviously any member of council. All contact information is available on our website, phone numbers, email addresses. There's lots of ways to for the public to voice their feedback, ask questions, concerns on policy or council decisions. The last change that I'll highlight is that the new version of the policy enhances the sections for both council and staff members' use of social media. As members of council, committee members, and staff, we are all ambassadors for the town, and we work, or that we work for or volunteer for. We are held to a higher standard than the residents, and we all play a role in ensuring that the image of the municipality is upheld. Of the highlights of the policy.
Yes, go ahead, Executive Director Peg.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Manager Carter, for the overview of the policy. I just wanted to take a moment and say that we have received a lot of great feedback on this draft already, and I think that's one of the benefits of having a committee to council structure, is it gives us that chance to have a second hard look at the policy and make sure that we've done our due diligence in incorporating that feedback wherever possible. So Manager Carter and I are aware of some feedback that's already circulating, and we'll have another look at the policy to see how we can ensure and give committee and council the utmost confidence that we aren't overstepping in terms of human rights. It's certainly not our intention at all. Our intention is to create a respectful workplace for our staff and a respectful community space where individuals can interact. But certainly based on some of the feedback we've received, we'll have another look so that council can have that confidence when this comes back in a couple weeks that extra layer has been applied. And I also wanted to just say about social media, just to put a fine point on what Manager Carter had mentioned, is that we all have a role to play. And although the policy speaks specifically to what, thou shall do and shall not do, I think it's all about being a good human and a good member of this community that we're all proud to be a part of. So I just, put a challenge out there to everyone. If you're going to put something, and I say this to my sons all the time, out into, the abyss forever and ever and ever, make sure that's something that you'd want associated with your name. Because even once it's deleted, it's still there. And this is such a great community and such a good opportunity for people to interact together online. So certainly don't mean to limit that interaction. We just want to make sure it's done in a positive and productive manner.
Well, thank you so much for those clarifications. It's appreciated. So I'll read in the recommendation that staff report CCS 2023-02 social media policy be received and that council adopt the social media policy as presented. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ring, Councillor Perry, comments, questions? Deputy Mayor? Oh, no, I didn't. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we do have some participants online. If you wish to address a council or this committee of the whole regarding the staff report, please press the raise your hand feature. And not at this time, Your Worship.
Okay. So we've had a mover and a seconder. Any questions or comments? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to tell me, how is it that you don't burn out in this job? Because seriously, if there are two of you, it would seem to me that it's a 24-hour-a-day job. Unless you essentially walk away from it at 4:30 and then pick it up at 8:30 in the morning, because otherwise, I just don't know how you could lead a productive life. Your sanity.
Well, it's not exactly about your report, but it's related.
But it is monitoring the stuff that is posted on social media.
Your Worship, to Councillor Baines, that's a slippery slope of a question. It's tiring. It is exhausting sometimes too, seeing the comments from some people, and it's whether it's towards staff, towards council members. I take it personally sometimes too, and I'm very passionate about it, that, there's a right way to say things. We can't monitor 24/7. That's impossible. We do state that on all of our channels too. That's right at the top. We do not do these. That's why we really encourage, if you have, simple questions, please, or something more urgent, call customer service. You're going to get a quicker answer that way. We have many other things to do, only being two of us for all the communications for the whole town. We run the website and town pages, and we have so many other things that we're working on, not just social media. We can't pay attention all the time. So you'll get a quicker response through customer service. Reach out to a council member if it's a policy matter or urgent thing that you have to deal with. We do have, it's stated in the report that there are some other peripheral or department pages that are run by those staff too, but they're going to follow this policy as well. So we do what we can. We do our best to monitor and keep an eye during the day. And obviously we will answer any questions as long as it's, again, asked in a respectful manner. Sometimes we'll take conversations offline if need be.
Thank you. And just a supplementary, I'm assuming that's becoming what must be a best practice throughout North America, or if you will, the Western world, as to how you keep your staff sane in dealing with some of this, that the protocols would be, you do walk away from it at a certain time and don't spend your evenings going through these posts.
That's right. We, through your worship to Councillor Baines, it's right. I mean, we do have corporate policies too, which with the can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but I make sure that our staff logs off when they're supposed to. We aren't physically checking. If we happen to see something, I might pop on quickly to correct if there's a blatant misinformation or something going out there. I do respond after hours when those things come up if we're aware of them. But again, that's not all the time. We can't make that promise.
Thank you for that. No further questions.
Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. So, it gives me a lot of angst in our setup. The training we've done through FCM, through that UK program, and some of the things that make sense with social media, I don't think it's a good use of our staff's time. We have information we need to disseminate to the public that they need to get, and I'm not sure it's a good use of our time to be going through these posts to decide whether they're worded properly or not worded properly. And where my headspace kind of goes is, the freedom of speech, and we need to hear from the people, but I'm not sure that it's in that way. And I feel that staff and council have a conflict to be participating in that conversation, because our space to impact these decisions is here, and we need the people to get the information to us. If you're, say, a retired councillor and you have all day to sit there and respond to social media, well, they're going to say, well, where's that Councillor Jeffrey? I don't hear from her. Well, she works. So, I don't know that it's a fair space. What was really promoted through the UK was that you allow the comments and space for, we have our specific surveys. Those are critically important because that's the best piece for us to get some information on specific topics. But to allow that public debate to occur, because there's people who are passionate, and I think Executive Director Peg said, all somebody does is screenshot it. So it's out there forever. If they screenshot it before you delete it, it's on our website. It reflects on us, and it won't matter to anybody that you say you took it down 5 minutes after. So I really tried to work this through my head to come to a positive way, but I really came out on the back end of just wondering how we could make this positive by creating links. This goes to mayor and click here to give your comments to mayor and council. Click here if you need to ask staff a question, and then you can put out the answers into social media as the information that people need. People are passionate and they can't resist the urge to come out and debate wherever it is. And there's lots of other avenues to do that. But I think the most important thing is for us to disseminate the information we need them to have, first of all, and then to get that information back to us to help us make our decisions in this space. And I'm not sure debating that somewhere else is a good use. And I really do think that in the communications role and the intergovernmental role that we have, that there's a lot more priorities for our staff to get to than trying to monitor conversations. Where I came from at the end of reading it 3 or 4 times.
Okay. Did you want to respond to that? Thank you.
Through your worship, to Councillor Jeffrey, I agree with what you're saying. But I just want to reassure you, we don't spend a lot of time combing our channels looking for those debates. We get tagged anytime somebody comments on our post. So we have a quick look and we can filter through pretty quickly. I do know that administratively, speaking to other municipalities that have turned off comments, it's not just a simple switch of a button. Every single post you do, you have to go back to that post and check a box that only your friends can comment. So that would take much more of our time than it is to just leave it be, let people have their say. If it's usually been quite obvious. I'd say probably in the last year, maybe 50 to 100 comments. We screenshot it, we save a copy ourselves so that we know if we delete it and somebody's upset about it, we've got a copy of exactly what they said. As you say, that can happen. But it's quicker for us to just take a snapshot, delete it, and move on. That doesn't take a lot of our time, the moderating part of it.
But anyway, that's fine. I'll leave it for now and I'll ask at the end if it comes to.
So Houston?
Thank you. And this may be through to Executive Director Peg, because my understanding is that we are voting to adopt this policy, but you said there may be some adjustments taken into consideration, feedback that you have received.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Houston, I won't pretend that I'm as knowledgeable as Clerk Almas on our new process. So possibly Clerk Almas can provide that clarity, but I will say that we're happy to receive feedback from committee and report back with amendments to the policy based on this extra level of review, based on the feedback we received this evening and from members of the public.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just to follow up to that, because I do have a couple of concerns, and I believe some of that communication has been sent around to staff as well, just around extending this policy out to personal social media accounts of committee members and how that may impact freedom of speech and rights to debate. So I'm just hoping that that is part of the review in before we adopt this final policy.
Yes, go ahead.
And thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Houston. So absolutely, we've heard a number of great comments this evening from the committee and are happy to work on incorporating those as well as the feedback that we've heard from some of the members of the public. I just wanted to add to that our intention, again, isn't to stop meaningful debate or discussion. It's when we find ourselves in situations where there's a violation of our respectful workplace policy. So it's one thing to disagree with a project or a process or an outcome of a decision. It's something else to be personal and say, derogatory things towards staff, members of council, other members of the community. And unfortunately, we have seen those things happen in the past, and we have had staff come forward with concerns under a respectful workplace policy. Obviously, I won't get into details. That would be a closed session item. But it is a legitimate concern to make sure that our staff that we uphold the intentions of our respectful workplace policy. So certainly not meaning to prevent debate. We just want to make sure that it's done in a respectful, project-oriented, decision-oriented way.
Thank you.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Fryer.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. And I share the same angst as I'm dealing with something that I'll readily admit to not being well versed in social media and such. But I was thinking about this being a step process, and that there's going to be need for amendments down the road, and that as we recognize shortcomings and holes to fill. And then I was looking forward as well to Thursday, the media relations training we're going to undertake, because I look at that as part of the whole process and understanding. And we're at Committee of the Whole today, and I definitely will support the report going forward to the 15th for council to consider. But I wouldn't be surprised if from those discussions we decide that we want to see some changes that could be coming forward. So it's one of those policies that you're putting in place that you're kind of, I really need to know more about and that. So as I said, I'm expecting on Thursday it'll be a bit of an assistance to us in regards to trying to understand the policy a little bit better.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor, we're not speaking to social media specifically, but we will be talking about roles and responsibilities for both council and staff in all communications,
Okay.
whatever the format.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? CO Skinner.
Just one general comment. Thank you, Your Worship. One of the things, and I've been thinking about this a bit about committee and task force members in particular, very much like the council training and the training of, for example, the mayor as the media spokesperson for the town. There's always space to say, I really had spoken against or for a certain thing, but ultimately council voted to continue down a different path, and I respect that. Now we're on that path. That doesn't take away your ability to say, I was thinking something else in a respectful way, because it is really all about running a wonderful town where people have their say. And from someone who's, for example, on one of our task forces, we want them to be advocates for the process, and that the process and the way that people's input is taken into account and how those decisions are made are relatively well made or very well made. And if they're not, then they have a chance to articulate their thoughts about the process. So in many ways, we want to figure out ways to say the words that embrace those inputs from people from on committees and task forces, and embrace the different viewpoints that you as governors and our task force and committee folks bring, while still respecting the overall process and the people involved in it. So we'll do some more thinking on the words. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to see a social media policy come forward. Social media is here to stay until it's replaced by something else, but and so many people now only get their information from social media, right? They're not reading newspapers or magazines or any of the things that we may have traditionally thought people would use to get their information from. They're on social media, that's it. And I'm happy we now have two people who are getting our information about what's happening in the town and what opportunities there are at the town, whether for residents or visitors or businesses. We have to use this tool. So thank you for bringing the policy forward. Thank you for saying there's little tweaks still to be made. So we'll see those when they come forward. I do have a question. It was raised during the budget, and I know council chose not to include it in the budget, but it was to do with some kind of monitoring tool for social media. Can you explain what that was in a little more detail? Now that we're talking about social media? Yeah.
Yes, Your Worship. I think it was actually a bit of a misunderstanding. It wasn't a social media monitoring. What it was would be a third-party service that would scour anything online, whether it was on social media sites, news posts, or anything that we could customize to send us a report of all these media stations have captured Collingwood in these topics. This is what's happening. So it wasn't social media monitoring. That's not what it was. It was more so to scour the online sphere for news about Collingwood.
So if I could just ask as a follow-up, then that would be, so if blog.ca said, Collingwood's the best place in the world, then you could share that and boost that? Is it that kind of
Maybe,
approach?
but unfortunately what it wouldn't capture is those private Facebook groups. Those are a very poor space for spreading mis or disinformation about what's going on. Unfortunately, that's a sphere that we can't get into because you have to have a personal account and be part of that to be part of those discussions. So that's unfortunately a spot that we can't really manage. But it was a different service. It wasn't about monitoring social media of our own channels. It was more so a scouring service that would see like what's happening, what are people talking about Collingwood.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Yes, Councillor Jeffrey.
To that question, Mayor Hamlin, I can tell you that I just gave permission to FCM. They have attached a tool to my personal and council social media accounts, and it tracks abuse and bad things they're using in terms of the abuse of women in politics, and so there is a tool out there that will track it because I just gave permission for them to use it on my accounts.
Well, there's lots to learn. Okay, so thank you for all of that. And we have a mover and a seconder, don't we? Do we? I believe so. Okay, we're going to vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, and thank you for your.
If I may just
Yes.
put one more plug in, I forgot it is mentioned in the staff report, but that we've just launched a corporate Instagram channel last week, and I think it's in the report. We're already up to 750 some followers. So follow us there. You'll get the same information that's on our Twitter and Facebook channels, but new set of channels. So hopefully more people are following. We're getting a lot of engagement on it already. So
That's fantastic. Thank you for mentioning it. The next staff report is with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 55 Mountain Road. This is the Canadian Tire expansion, and Manager Ayers is here to talk to us about it.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, and members of the public that may be attending virtually this evening. This presentation will provide a brief overview of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 55 Mountain Road to facilitate an expansion to the existing Canadian Tire store. The public meeting for this application was approximately 1 month ago, so much of this presentation may be somewhat of a refresher to members of council. Next slide, please. So this is a 2022 aerial image of the subject property, which is located on the west side of Highway 26 or Balsam Street, and it's approximately 10.3 hectares in size. Although the zoning bylaw amendment will apply to the entirety of the subject lands, the proposed development that is triggered it is the Canadian Tire store, which is indicated with the blue star on the slide. Surrounding land uses include environmental protection lands, being Black Ash Creek to the north and west of the property, and commercial lands to the east and south. Next slide, please. The subject property is zoned Regional Commercial Exception 1 or C21 and partly Environmental Protection or EP. You can see the environmental protection lands are in the blue on the screen. The C21 zone permits one home and auto supply store with a maximum gross leasable floor area of 7,669 square meters and one accessory unenclosed garden center to the home and auto supply store with a maximum gross leasable floor area of 995 square meters. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment would not alter the boundaries of the C21 zone. It would only amend the C21 exception provisions. Furthermore, the zoning bylaw amendment would not alter the boundaries or requirements related to the lands designated and zoned environmental protection along the western and northern perimeter of the site. Although the proposal would bring the existing commercial building closer to the EP lands to the west, the proposed building expansion would be located on existing paved areas and would not extend beyond what has already been developed through previous Planning Act applications. Next slide, please. So the proposed zoning bylaw amendment would increase the maximum gross leasable floor area of the home and auto supply store from 7,669 square meters to 9,600 square meters, or an increase of 1,931 square meters. And it would also increase the maximum gross leasable floor area of the accessory unenclosed garden center from 995 square meters to 1,500 square meters, an increase of 505 square meters. And this is all to facilitate an expansion to the existing store. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment would also introduce two new site-specific exceptions to the C21 zone, namely to decrease the minimum interior side yard to another zone from 10 meters to 8 meters, or a decrease of 2 meters, and to consider the lands within the C21 zone to be one contiguous lot for the purposes of determining zoning conformity. Next slide, please. So this is a proposed excerpt from the site plan drawings the preliminary site plan drawings that have been submitted, and this is what triggered the request for, or the requirement for, a zoning bylaw amendment. The proposed expansion to the Canadian Tire store is identified by the hatched areas along the south, west, and there's a small addition as well on the north side of the building. And the expanded and relocated garden center compound is proposed to be shifted further to the south or the left of the screen to align with the proposed southerly building expansion. Technical details regarding the proposed development have been extensively reviewed through a second pre-consultation process, and an application for an amendment to site plan control agreement is anticipated in the near future should the zoning bylaw amendment be enacted and passed by council. Next slide, please. So this slide illustrates the preliminary front building elevation with the proposed additions to the south and north sides of the building, and a photo of the existing structure as well as the proposed expansion to the south are also provided on this slide. And I would note these are preliminary building elevations, and technical matters pertaining to architectural design and other urban design related matters will be addressed further through the site plan control amendment application. Next slide, please. This slide simply identifies the various studies and reports that have been submitted in support of the zoning bylaw amendment. They've been extensively reviewed by the applicable town departments, external commenting agencies, and third-party peer reviewers. Next slide. So the proposed development is consistent and in conformity with all of the applicable provincial and municipal planning policy and regulatory instruments as outlined in the staff report. The property is appropriately designated and zoned for the existing commercial use, and the proposed expansion would represent intensification of an existing developed and municipally serviced lot, thereby contributing to complete communities in compact urban form. Furthermore, the proposed zoning bylaw and associated commercial expansion would support the growth of a local business and is anticipated to accommodate approximately 15 to 18 new employees. The subject application was circulated to town departments, applicable third-party peer reviewers, and external commenting agencies for review and comment, and all matters have been sufficiently addressed. And I would also note that no comments were received from any member of the public in response to the subject application. Next slide, please. So following today's Committee of the Whole meeting, next steps include council rendering a decision to approve or refuse the zoning bylaw amendment, which is anticipated at the May 15th council meeting. If the zoning bylaw amendment is approved, a notice of passing will be circulated to all individuals and organizations who formally requested notice, and the notice will also be published in the local newspaper. Following council's decision, there is a 20-day appeal period. If the amendment is passed and no appeals are received, the zoning bylaw amendment would come into full force and effect. And this concludes my presentation of the file. I am available to answer questions, and the applicant is also attending virtually this evening should members of the committee have any specific questions for them. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you. Would there be any comments from anyone online, Clerk on this?
Your Worship, again, those participating remotely, please press the raise your hand feature should you wish to address the committee. And not at this time, Your Worship.
All right, I'll read in the recommendation that staff report P 2023-13, proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 55 Mountain Road, dated May 1, 2023, be received, and that an amending zoning bylaw attached as Appendix A be enacted and passed. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey, Councillor Potts, any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. We have one departmental update tonight. It's going to be presented by Manager Truman and Manager McGinnity. Clerk Holmes is going to make a few introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, that is going to change. It's going to be myself, and it's going to be Director Slama speaking to it. It's very brief. So the purpose of the department update is basically for transparency. So it doesn't require council approval. However, it does relate to purchases required for the water treatment plant expansion and other water system facilities, and is worthy of acknowledging as the equipment is not sold directly by the manufacturer. So it will be procured competitively by suppliers bidding to ensure we receive good value for money, and it is consistent with our procurement bylaw. And Director Slama will address what the item is and what it relates to.
Okay, welcome, Director Slama.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. So one comment I wanted to make was just in related to the title of the update. And while it had been titled a non-standard, this isn't really. This isn't a non-standard. It isn't through discussion with the procurement team. We'll be going through the regular procurement processes, as Clerk Almas mentioned, but I think a more appropriate title for the update would be Allen Bradley Rockwell Equipment Specification. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about what it is that we're talking about. So programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, and programmable automation controllers, PACs, are critical equipments that form part of the supervisory control and data acquisition network at the town's drinking water system. So I know those are big words and acronyms, but basically these are programmable equipment that automate the operation of the water system with oversight by the operators. And to meet the provincial requirements of our system, it is essential to have this automation because it helps us with it completes the continuous monitoring, and it can adjust the system. And this also speaks to the criticality of the equipment so that we're meeting the requirements our provincial requirements of operating our system. So Allen Bradley and Rockwell Automation, PLC and PAC equipment makes about 80% of the market share in the water and wastewater industry in Ontario. And it is currently installed in Collingwood's existing drinking water facilities. When we look at replacing this equipment or maybe installing new equipment, some of this equipment and controls, you can range in price from a couple $100, and usually it's in the tens of thousands of dollars. And we know, looking ahead at our capital projects, we are anticipating approximately 1.2 million will be spent on upgrading or replacing or installing the PLC or PAC equipment as part of the major water components of projects over the next 5 years. So that includes the water treatment plant expansion, as Clerk Almus mentioned. We also have some other projects. We're doing some work at our Carmichael Reservoir and pumping station. We're doing upgrades there. We anticipate in the next 5 years to work on construction of our new Stewart Road Reservoir and booster pump station. And also in the 5-year plan, we're looking at further upgrades at our Davie Reservoir and booster pump station. So we anticipate those are some examples of projects where we anticipate this equipment will be or specified. So in consultation with the town's purchasing division, Environmental Services has decided to continue to specify Allen Bradley Rockwell controller equipment in these construction projects over the next 5 years. And this will help ensure the town has access to a wide range of consulting services to support the technology. We have access to local distributor support. Also ensure operator training for new installations will be minimal. Obviously, bringing in a different type of equipment would require different programming, different training, and a different level of resource. So it's not preferred. This would also ensure only a single licensing and software support agreement would be required for this type of equipment. It will ensure consistent, compatible technology be installed at the different interconnected locations within our water system. So sometimes these units are speaking to each other across the system. And it'll also ensure compatibility with the new and the legacy equipment while newer technology is installed throughout the system. So as Clerk Almus already mentioned, Allen Bradley Rockwell is the manufacturer of this equipment, but there are many vendors that can supply and install the equipment. So our purchasing policy will be followed as we work through those purchases and our installations. And this will ensure a competitive process for whether it's the purchase or the install of the equipment. So hopefully that just provides more of a background of what we're talking about. And again, looking at the level of equipment that we need to purchase over the next 5 years, we thought it was a good idea to bring this forward for transparency to council and the public.
Great. Are there any I guess we're not looking to the public for comments on this. This is an update. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Okay, well, thank you, Director Slema, for that. The next item on our agenda, I'll read what's before us, that the minutes of the following committees and boards be hereby received and recommendations contained therein be approved. The first one is the Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes for February 23rd and March 16th, 2023. The second is the Collingwood Downtown BIA Board of Management minutes for March 9, 2023. The third is the Museum Advisory Committee minutes for March 23rd, 2023. And the last one is the Trails and Active Transportation Advisory Committee minutes for February 9 and March 9, 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Baines and Deputy Mayor Fryer. Any questions or comments on these minutes? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. In regards to the accessibility minutes and the March 16th one, I realized that they're 6 weeks ago, so I wondered. I was looking at the item 7 in the minutes, and the first part was on transportation, and one of the lines read that there was some concerns with potential misuse of service, highlighting the medical appointment or procedures will be given priority over social needs. And there was a couple of other spots that talked about concerns. I just wondered if I could maybe, through you to the CAO, ask if we could just maybe get an update on how things have been going with transportation. Just as I said, when I read that, I was thinking, well, these are older minutes. I'm sure all those things are being addressed, but I just wonder if that would be okay.
Are you able to address that this evening, CEO?
Through the chair. I can't address it this evening. I did ask a couple of questions of the transit coordinator earlier today, and he didn't indicate there were any ongoing concerns, but I'd be happy to take it away and ask those questions.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Any other questions? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. The consent agenda has 3 items on it. I'll read in what it says, that the general consent agenda be herein received, and further that the information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are that of the authors and are not verified or approved as being correct. And this is number 1 is T. Cardo's re-open air burning, 2 G. Ross the spit, and 3 SPR information release, and this is public opinion re Bill 23. Any comments or on this? Okay, Councillor Jeffrey.
8.3, it's really procedural. It didn't seem like the normal kind of thing that appears on our consent agenda, and I was wondering if this is one that someone, or staff or council, had pulled from the general correspondence list. If that were done, we would note it, I assume, on the consent agenda list that it had been pulled from the other list.
Clerk Almus is just having a look.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would generally agree with Councillor Jeffrey, and I am not exactly sure why this one was pulled independently, other than it's in particular relating to, I think, affordable housing impacts. But I don't believe that anybody specifically pulled it around the council table.
Because I think sometimes it would be helpful if we noted if it was staff provided, and then we can have an understanding as to.
Okay. On to other business. Sorry, did you have something else? No. I don't think we have to vote on that. We have to vote on that?
Yes.
Oh, but we didn't last meeting. Okay. All right. Eventually I'll get this. I still have 3.5 years. Okay. It might take a while. Okay. So did I don't think I've asked for a mover and a seconder.
Moved.
Okay. So moved, and by Deputy Mayor and Councillor Potts has seconded it. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Any other business on this agenda? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hamlin, for accommodating this report at this meeting. It's regarding my attendance at FCM for the March meeting. I did attend this one virtually because I was leaving for Amman the day after those meetings were completed. They were held in March 7th to the 9th at the Regional Municipality of Durham, and we were into working on our pre-budget priorities, and they were defined in a publication titled A Better Life for All Canadians. And some of the things that address, kind of the top 4: climate adaptation and resilience, housing and homelessness, infrastructure funding, and the new RCMP bargaining agreement, which downloaded all of their retroactive costs to small municipalities all across Canada. And the main point we're trying to make there is you should maybe talk to us before you make those kind of decisions. And unfortunately, we're disappointed that the federal government didn't respond as we would have wished, but we hope they got the message that they need to consult. In the Rural Forum, the discussion was mostly or priority around rural infrastructure, with a particular emphasis on the impact of community growth on local water infrastructure and challenges financing the necessary work. And I thought this would be of particular importance to us. And the feedback will inform FCM's ongoing conversations with Infrastructure Canada on the next generation of federal infrastructure and the funding there too. The Governance Working Group, of which I am Vice Chair, received a final report with suggestions from the Institute on Governance following completion of the Board Effectiveness Survey process, developing a model and framework to strengthen board effectiveness going forward. And we're very pleased to finally get to that point where such things will be considered as 2-year terms for Board of Directors as opposed to having to run every year. A lot of committee meetings that were held. I would highlight environmental issues and sustainable development. We did receive a staff update on the National Adaptation Strategy and Action Plan, as well as an update from the Green Municipal Fund Chair, Mayor Alan D'Souza. And he updated us on key GMF priorities, including new funding or adaptation programming. In the Anti-Racism, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, we received FCM's AREI team facilitated. It was a condensed 2-hour version of FCM's AREI fundamental training course for our standing committee. And the session focused on the 5 faces of oppression, the uses of power, and what it means for AREI in governance, recruitment, structure, culture, and practices. And also of interest, I thought, in our resolutions regarding disposable wipes. It's something that has come up frequently over a couple of decades here at Council. FCM's Board of Directors adopted a resolution calling on the federal government for a moratorium on the flushable designation used by some 20 manufacturers of sanitary wipes sold in Canada, and requested that the February 2022 decision of the Competition Bureau of Canada terminate an investigation into the flushable designation be reviewed by the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Industry. And what we desperately need is that definition of or requirements of what flushable would be and what would qualify it to be flushable. And then there was would be of interest also to our mayor through to the Great Lakes Mayor's Group, protection of waterways from aquatic invasive species. And FCM's Board of Directors adopted a measure proposing that the federal government implement a national program such as a watercraft inspection station and passport program to prevent vessels facilitating the spread of aquatic invasive species across provincial and territorial borders and into Canada. And with invasive species a growing problem in Canada, action is needed to better protect vulnerable waterways across the country. So those are but a few of this report, but I'll be happy to share the full report with all of you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Is there any other business? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. And I had a couple of items, and the first one would be I was going to give some reflection about the Ontario Small Urban Municipalities meeting that we attended last week. So while all the topics, homelessness efforts, accessibility standards, and how they can enable inclusion, AMO's 2023 initiatives, traffic calming, short-term accommodation, implementation, and enforcement challenges. I believe all the presentations at least are available on the OSUM website for your review. There were tapings of most of them, and that should be up on the website shortly. I looked and they weren't there yet. But one item I wanted to note to my fellow councillors about today is AMO's concern that they voiced with a continuing inaction indication so far by the province in regards to the property assessment impacts update that is now over 3 years delayed. So I wanted to ask first, if I could, through the chair, to CAO Skinner, if from a staff opinion, do you feel it's also a case where there continues to be no indication if the update will be implemented in January 1st, 2024?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, we do get ongoing multi-person send-outs from MPAC around when they may have the next update in place. In general, I am starting to have some concern. They say a rising tide rises all boats, but the question becomes those unusual situations where a property has increased in value, or for that matter, decreased in value more quickly than its neighbors. So eventually there may be some surprises for property owners. And the longer that the update takes, and now having been 3+ years, the more likely that we'll end up with some people who are not expecting an unusual change in their property taxes.
Just
Yes, go
following up on that, that's right in line with my concern. When I heard that, I spoke to the AMO rep for a little bit about it. But before I was going to kind of start to commit to anything with AMO about it, I wanted to talk to staff first and just get their feel of things. And it sounds like there's some concern there too. So as a takeaway, I'm gonna look into it a little bit more and see if it is a case of where maybe we need to, as councils, start to put something forward to try to get action happening at the provincial level, because that's a major concern about it. Is that we're talking hundreds of thousands of homes, and I'm very concerned about the number of appeals that may happen at the impact level when this finally does go through, because technically they're working with 2015 values right now, because it's effective as January 1st, 2016. So that was on that particular one. Another matter that the AMO representatives updated the attendees on was the concern with the low voter turnout for the municipal election. And I know it is a few years away, but they feel there's a need to discuss and then circulate findings in a timely fashion, so that when all municipalities will be considering their own situation and any initiatives they want to take on closer to the election period, it'll be kind of a shared situation going forward. And the other one was workforce planning. There's a collective recognition of the issue in regards to municipal services workforce maintenance and as retirements in pursuit of other initiatives are occurring. So AMO is trying to work on ways to assist municipalities on dealing with those pressures that are coming forward in that regard. So I'm hopeful that will be of an assistance. And then the other item, if I may, Mayor Hamlin, I spoke just briefly when Paul and Nate Collingwood spoke to us in the council meeting, and I am considering, and I want to make notice of motion right now. I will work with staff and try to put some wording together that recognizes everything that's been discussed today. I had been circulating the idea in my head about the no mo may, but it seems to me like there's maybe a broader way to look at it. But I do believe that it'd be good to have a conversation, even though it'll be mid-May by the time we talk about it on the 15th. About putting something out there that there's two schools of thought. You want people to have a choice. We do have some restrictions in regards to lawn care, and we do have the long-term plan of putting a pollinator master plan together. So it would only be for something in regards to the short term and for the month of May 2023. And then I would look at the master plan as being something that will address our concerns going forward. So I would just bring notice right now that I will put something together. I'll work with staff on putting some wording together, and it'll be on the agenda for next Wednesday so that everybody can see the exact wording. And the public, even though it will be a council meeting, they certainly can contact through customer service and it'll get circulated to council if they've got any concerns with the wording of the motion, and then we'll have the discussions on the 15th.
Okay, thank
those
you.
are my two items.
Any other business?
I
Oh, do you have one
did
more
have
thing?
Just
Yeah,
one
go
other
ahead.
one. And this happened when we were during the conversation, we mentioned about the coronation happening. I think this will be the last meeting that the Queen will be looking over council. So I just wanted to recognize that it's going to be a change. And I was at the hockey game I mentioned on yesterday. We sang the "O Canada," looking at the Queen picture in the Stain Arena, and I said, that's probably the last time she'll get the "O Canada" sang to her too. So it's just recognizing that there will be that formal change. There'll be a picture that'll appear up there that hasn't been there for 53 years, is it, or 56?
It's been a while. Yeah, it's the only one I remember.
So I just wanted to mention that. I thought that was something that deserves some recognition.
No, thank you for that. I'll just mention two things out of the discussion you've just raised about the conference we attended last week. I was pleased to hear you say the material would be posted online, including the video, some of them. And I'll just mention for counselors who might be interested, there was a very interesting discussion on short-term accommodation, and I know that'll be something we'll be considering in the coming months. And there was presentations by the town of Blue Mountains, Prince Edward County, and the township of Tiny. And it was very interesting to me to hear how much effort's gone into all of these, and notwithstanding, they still only seem to have about half of them licensed. But the township of Tiny, their CAO spoke, and really it was a tale of woe, and they're still not there after many years, and $1 million and whatever they're doing. It's turned into a litigious mess. So anyway, I'll just recommend that to you if you're looking for something to listen to. And also, I was appreciative of what our deputy mayor said about the need for reassessment. I do think there is a general agreement. I also believe that the decision is resting squarely in the cabinet office at Queen's Park. And I know there's lots of lobbyists out there, including the Downtown Business Corps, commercial property owners, because I think with so much working from home, their leasable space has not been considered as valuable as it probably was in 2016. All to say, lobbyists are hard at work, I believe, and maybe efforts might be directed through our own lobby group, which of course is AMO. So I'll just leave that thought with you. The other thing I wanted to mention just briefly is council knows that we have a sister city in Kitano, Japan, which is a small city, and we signed up an agreement with them some 40 years ago to be a sister city. And we have a very active local group of volunteers who are our Kitano Collingwood committee. And they are letting me know that there's a strong possibility the mayor of Kitano is coming to visit in mid-September. So you heard it here first. And as things unfold, and if we need a committee of council, of course, we'll move forward on that. But there seems to be a pretty strong feeling this is going to happen. So we'll get more on that. Yes, Councillor Baines.
Mayor Hamlin, I'm interested to follow up, I think, with probably CAO or perhaps the clerk, in regard to this Twin Cities. Are we still a twin city with Zihuatanejo, Mexico?
Go ahead, CEO.
Yes, I understand we're twinned with 3 different jurisdictions. By far, the most active would be the Kitano, Japan. But the other 2 are still on the books. It's managed by Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Haven't heard much from the other 2 lately.
I've been to Zihuatanejo, and as a matter of fact, Timothy Leary caused quite a ruckus in Zihuatanejo because of his lifestyle, shall we say. Hence, when I was there were Marines walking down the beach with submachine guns. So I think
That must have been
a holdover from
right.
Mr. Leary having been there. At any rate, I know the town. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any public delegations this evening, Clerk Almas? Nobody left online? Okay, that means no. And so we're looking for a motion to adjourn. Okay. UK. I wonder who it's going to be. Okay, Councillor Jeffrey, thank you so much. All those in favor. Thanks so much, everyone. Good night.